Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to the podcast. This is Wes. Typically on this YouTube channel, I feature different independent creatives with these interviews that I do. Sometimes they're comic book creators, sometimes they're painters. Today I have a solo game dev uh, named Rebecca who's got this really cool game called Jackie's Wacky Adventure. And she's going to talk a little bit about her process and inspirations and some of the obstacles she had to overcome. So, Rebecca, you want to give us a brief introduction?
Yeah, Wes, thank you for having me. And um, so I guess I started out in just typical jobs that I was just chasing a paycheck and pretty well miserable. And so I decided one day that I wanted to do something meaningful with my life. And I just asked, what are the things that I love doing? And how can I
Hmm.
combine those things? So I really love science and I really love gaming. So I went back to school and started working on an educational game. Um, and then found out that I wasn't a really good fit in the educational arena. I didn't want to conform to what their idea of a game was, especially when they've never even played games.
Mm.
So I started building a commercial game. And mainly that was because the kids that were playing the educational game they were just skipping through the educational part and getting to the gameplay part. And they were like, this is a really cool game. Why don't you make it into a real game? And
Uh-huh.
so I thought, yeah, what the heck? So this is the new art. The Disney looking fox is the old art that kind of came from the educational game.
Mhm.
Didn't really intend for Jaki to be a 3-year project in my life. I thought it would be a 6-month educational game, one and done, and then move on to my passion, which I haven't started yet, except for to write the story. But
Yeah.
I kind of fell in love with Jaki, and the players fell in love with Jaki, so she became a big, huge thing.
Yeah. I mean, so you've spent 3 years on this game. Like
Three
that.
years,
That is an insane amount of time. And has it been full time,
full
or have you
time.
been full time? Wow.
Actually, yeah, it kind of happened. Feel like I don't know. You feel like you're kind of on a journey, and
Hmm.
you go on this journey that's meant to be. And you just
Yeah.
can't worry about the things that you think your life should have been or can be or want to be. You just go where the journey takes you. So I went back to school wanting to do something meaningful with my life, leave this world a better place than how I found it.
Hmm.
I graduated March the 13th, 2020, and COVID shut the economy down on Monday.
Hmm.
What was that, the 16th? Couldn't find a job.
Yeah.
Tried 6 months, couldn't find a job, not one that would pay back my student loans. So I just said, well, I'm just going to follow my dream. I'm going to start an indie game studio, just me right now. Hopefully, I can build a team for the next game that I want to do. And Jaki just became my life for the next 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the interesting thing about doing anything creative is that it's kind of like an all or nothing sort of thing, right? Like you were saying, you can't really always see around the corner of what life is going to throw at you if you go down this path of trying to do something creative. But what's interesting to me about doing things creative is that you can't do it half-heartedly. Like you pretty much have to give it everything it is that you got. Like you can kind of half-heartedly be an accountant, but you can't really half-heartedly be a game designer. you know, like because it's just
Right.
not going
Because it shows. I mean, you're I don't know, the game is kind of an extension of yourself, but a game is a system and it's a dynamic system and an ever evolving
to. Hmm.
system. And it's that system between the game and what the game wants to be, and you as the designer, what you want it to be, but then what the player makes it when the player starts playing the game and the game responds to the player if it's a good game. And then it becomes this whole dynamic thing that you can watch grow. So I agree. I mean, it can't be a half-hearted thing. You can't be in a bad place. Honestly, I don't think you can make it all about money. I mean, you just think, well, this game was successful. This game made money. I'm just going to make another 1 millionth farm sim clone. There's no heart and soul to it.
Yeah. And people can smell it from a mile away if you're just trying to collect a paycheck. And they, like, we've been sold so much in this culture. There's just been such a commercialism that's kind of like infected everything to where audio's going. If you're not creating something from your heart, then people really can't connect with it,
Right. I do have a video that I did without sound. It's my trailer without sound. If there was a way you could show it, because I know the sound is kind of annoying there.
Yeah, I hope it's not playing on your end.
Right, it's not now.
Okay, is this the?
Yeah, those are old. A year ago, so a lot has changed in the last year. It's on the 5th iteration.
Okay, we got the official game trailer right here.
That should be the newest one, yeah.
Okay, let's play this.
And on this trailer, I did do the video editing. I hired a friend to do the furry art for Jaki, transformed her. I told her just sex up my fox a bit. I didn't want a Disney fox anymore. So she did a real good job of that. And then a wonderful guy that I met on Twitter, Jalen Askins, he did the narrative for the trailer, and he did the voice from an Uber boss, which I haven't really revealed. And then I met a really great guy on Twitter as well, Charles Wolf, that did the music and the OST for the game. So I feel like all of those things kind of came together to give it a lot more polish, a lot more respectability going forward.
Yeah. I mean, did you feel like as you were making this that, you were saying that there's certain aspects to it that the game is almost telling you what it wants to be? Like, what has your experience been with that? Like, what do you mean by that? Like, is it like you're designing the systems, but the systems, they're not working unless you, I guess you can explain. Like, I don't know exactly what you mean by that, but I understand from an artist perspective, but from a game designer's perspective, when you say like the game wants to be a certain way, what do you mean by that?
Well, yeah, kind of. I hadn't thought about it the way you were taking it, but kind of both ways. I think as a game designer, if somebody asks me, what are you as a game designer? I'm a problem solver.
Okay.
So when I come up with something that doesn't work for the game, no matter how much I'm in love with that idea, I have to do what the game will do. If I've got something that I've worked really hard on, and I'm really proud because it works in the code and it's a beautiful piece of code, but it doesn't resonate well with my player, I have to walk away from that. So I have to just walk away from that and put something else in that does resonate with my player. It's kind of a weird process. I know I probably don't do this in a beautiful standardized way that people, if you go to school and they say, this is how you design a game, you do A, B, C, D, and E. I probably don't do that because I'm a very divergent thinker. I don't have a box at all. I'm so far outside of the box. So, I'll get started on something and have an idea for a quest. And then at 2:00 in the morning, I'll wake up and think, oh my gosh, I can take this and run with it. So for instance, I wanted a collectible in my game. I'd use these collectibles to allow the player to level up their skills. So I have gnomes. I draw these gnomes, and each gnome is basically an Easter egg or a tribute to a game that has influenced me, just as a way of telling this game, thank you for being an influence in my life, getting me here. So then I had this quest I was going to have a store that sold the gnomes in case the player couldn't find them. And then that went into having Granny's gnomes because I thought that was kind of a cute idea. And then I started reading and researching about gnomes, and there's a whole community around gnomes and, you know, the Gnome Liberation Front and gnome napping. And so I thought, well, that's funny. So I made a quest out of that. And Grandpa Gnome gets gnome napped and you have to go after him. But then I don't know how I jumped from there to some of the mythology. I like having some actual things that people could be curious about, mythology or history or science or whatever. So somewhere I jumped along there and I decided that Granny was old. She wanted to be young again. I wanted this sexy barmaid Granny. And so I started looking at lore and mythology around the Fountain of Youth and immortality and Greek mythology, Norse mythology. So now you've got 3 quests that are Norse mythology, Greek mythology, and the Fountain of Youth in Florida related to this. So that's kind of how it morphed from a simple little thing to a big, huge quest line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. That's really interesting. I'm a huge fan of gnomes too. I don't have a whole lot of pictures of them in my art right now, but I had a whole phase where I just loved gnomes, just the idea of them, you know, living in hovels and that sort of thing. On this on this picture that we have up on the screen, you were telling me that it's also, you were just saying it's also similar to the story you were telling me of the moon. Like, what was the significance of the moon?
What's the picture on the screen? All I see is white.
Oh, really? That's all you're seeing?
I see clicked. There we go. I see something now. Okay, yeah.
Okay, that's
so.
Okay. I guess it doesn't show the video whenever. Sorry about that. So yeah, the cover art.
Yeah, the cover art. It's a really cool story because Jackie's started out, like I said, as a simple educational game. It was 30 minutes. Taught the scientific method and it was done. So I had this idea that I was kind of doing, like inspired by Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And you've got this murder in Toontown and Jackie's a detective. She left Toontown. And anyway, this is a real simple thing. It's not educational anymore. I've taken the education out, but it's still one of the main quest lines. That's her backstory. And it's kind of an easy thing. It's a lot of dialogue, it's investigation, puzzle solving, and but then I wanted something that appealed more towards me, more combat centric, more prophecy related, more intriguing, more mysterious. So I wrote this prophecy, and it was basically one that was born under the blood wolf moon would save both worlds, Toontown and the real world that's juxtaposed against the Toon world. And there's this ultimate big bad evil that's voiced by Jalen Askins. And it's a really difficult quest. I don't make any apologies for that because the reward you get for it is literally a game changer. So it's really, really difficult. It's going to be very, very difficult to solve. But anyway, I hired this artist to, like I said, sex up my fox, get away from this Disney look. And she put this moon behind her. And I was like, wow, because I didn't even tell her that prophecy. I had told her the Toontown quest, but I had not told her the Radiance prophecy quest. And she came up with this moon. And actually, she was going to put enemies in the background, but I told her, I said, well, you know, it's a role-playing game, and the finale ends where she goes on this long quest and ends up in these snowy mountains at Chilgrave Keep and faces off with this ultimate big bad. And so she drew this castle in the background and kind of gave this feeling of that you're going on this journey up to this castle.
That's so cool. That's such a cool little sign. It's like a little encouragement from the universe or whatever to keep going, to have something like that come into your life. It's just so cool.
Absolutely. I definitely believe that God guides this, and he's put some things together that are just, you know, I don't believe in coincidence. I believe Things happen for a reason, and I take that as a sign that I'm on the right path with the game. Um, so I was really
Yeah.
excited about the art and really excited that she came up with the moon. And then I was like, I can't believe I didn't think about the moon. I mean, good golly, I wrote the prophecy. Why didn't I think about the moon?
So you, so this was kind of this whole process of creating this thing. Would you say that it was kind of like a spiritual transformation for you in a way? I mean, like you've gone through your own journey. You know, like you have this character going through this journey, but you yourself have been on a journey creating
Right.
something for 3 years, and like the amount of ups and downs and the amount of times that I'm sure you doubted whether this is going to pan out and like whether it's worth doing, and then going back and being like, no, I'm gonna do it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I came from a very dark place. Like I said, I'd just been in menial jobs, web design,
Hmm.
sales. I made a ton of money in sales, but I wasn't happy. I
Yeah.
ended up, I was going through a divorce. 1 month after my divorce, my sister got killed by a drunk driver. Um, the only joy I had in my life was my border collies. Had I not had them, I probably wouldn't be here today. I
Right.
just started questioning my existence. I thought, I'm not happy. Um, Life's too long to not be happy. So I just decided to throw caution to the wind, take my savings account, do something I love. And so I started, like I said, I started out with educational games, was constantly butting heads with academia. Um,
Hmm.
they had their idea of what a game should be, and games are more powerful than that. They weren't
Right.
using the potential. They just wanted it to be basically a PowerPoint that kids had to race the car to the stop sign. What is 2 plus 2? Pass a
Hmm.
test, then you can race the car again. Um, so even though I had the opportunity to do a paid postdoc, and I just said, I'm not going to do it. I turned down sales jobs. Just recently turned down a very lucrative sales job in pharmaceuticals. So maybe I'm crazy. A lot of my friends think I'm crazy. They don't
Hmm.
understand why I think building a game is meaningful, but I feel like
Hmm.
it's meaningful. I think it touches people. I think stories are powerful. I think
Hmm.
stories touch people in a world that's got so many wars and so many stresses. And if you can just kind of take a vacation in a game world and go and play as a fox, a ninja, powerful, in charge of her own destiny. Um,
Hmm.
I just think it's powerful, and I think it's worth doing. And I've got a lot of joy in my life now, not a lot of money in my bank account, but I'm happy. So I guess, does
Yeah.
that answer your question? I guess it has been a journey and it has been transformative.
Totally. Totally. I think what's interesting about you talking about this experience with the educational games, is there's some real irony to that. It's like you have this academic perspective that's coming in and trying to tell you, no, you design the game to where they go to the stoplight and then they spell the word stop and then they can go to the next thing, and the kids don't care about that at all. It doesn't connect with them at all. They're
That's it.
just skipping through it or whatever. But those same academics will sit here and maybe they would look at the game and as that you have now and say it's not quote unquote educational, but it is educational because there's like a spiritual transmission that's happening through the art, that if you're somebody who grew up playing like Zelda, or for me, like one of my inspirations for the suicide thing that I'm doing, like Oddworld, or any of these different properties that you grow up with, there's something that is like intangible that you get from it, that is it's just like a mega dose of inspiration that makes you want to, it makes you want to do something. Like when you consume a piece of art that really comes from somebody's heart, even if it's not perfect, it inspires you. It gives you something you really can't put words onto, really. And that is like the highest level for anything, for any kind of like communication of of something between humans. And so it's kind of ironic that this academic would sit here and probably praise like the stories of Shakespeare or something like that, but then would look at a video game and say, "Oh, this is a complete waste of time because you're telling this goofy little adventure." You know what I mean?
Right. They don't. They have no vision. I think
Mm-hmm.
my research while I was doing my PhD, my research, there was just tons of scientific research that showed that um, the school system they like to put people in little boxes, right, and put a number
Mm-hmm.
value on you, which I'm not so sure is great for kids' mental health when they have a number assigned to them based on a standardized test. Um, in a game, they can go out and interact with that game, and every player that plays it, I've done my job. If everybody that plays it comes out with something different
Mm-hmm.
to their experience, to their life, how it makes them feel, just if it just lets them get away from some stress and blow off some steam. My biggest inspiration and my whole dissertation was about curiosity in games. So Todd Howard, I think he's just amazing. And he focuses so on curiosity in his games. And what I was trying to tell the academic community is that, you don't have to beat a kid over the head. You don't have to say, here's fact 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's a static diagram, memorize it,
Mm-hmm.
regurgitate it on a test. We're going to check it off. I've done my job. I get a raise because the kids passed.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I think about it is if I can just put a spark of curiosity out there, then it's up to the individual. I'm not looking to get 90% or a bell curve to react to my game the way I want it to react. But if I put a spark out there that sparks their curiosity, they can build it into a bonfire or a little tiny fire, or they can have a just kind of warming embers, or they can let it go cold. But it's up to the individual how they react to that. And I think curiosity is powerful. It's innate, it's a survival mechanism, and the school system tends to burn it out of people. When I tried to publish, now my committee and the university that I studied under told me that my dissertation, which was 600 pages long on a mod of Skyrim, I got my PhD by modding Skyrim, and they paid me to do it. So that was pretty awesome. Um, but my committee told me they saw me as a paradigm changer, and that just humbled me immeasurably. But then they don't listen to what I was saying. They say,
Mm-hmm.
well, you're a paradigm changer, but here, I mean, like, all right, just to tell you how little they understand about games. Um, I designed a mod for Skyrim where the player would use basic genetics concepts to build or bioengineer a companion dragon, a little baby dragon that would actually carry things for you, would fight for you, blow fire, blow ice, whatever. The kids loved it. They interacted with it really well. And then when my committee saw the potential to get a grant, we actually got an NSF grant on it, and I forced them to pull it. It
Mm-hmm.
made me mad because they wanted, I called the game Dragon Mist. They
Mm-hmm.
wanted to call it Be the Next Harry Potter. I can't even wrap my mind around how that relates.
Yeah.
And then they want to tell me how to build the game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the perfect example of like these middlemen that try to step in and think because they have the money that they need to like put their hands into what the creative people are doing. It's
Right.
like you give them the money and you step back and you let them do what they're doing without trying to like force it into this thing. And it's a really weird thing that like society has done where we try to force people to be like these cookie cutter versions of like somebody's idea of what a person should be. Like it's not the human quality, the spiritual side of life is not uh, it it's like it's not even recognized now. Like it's looked at as something that is just um, a silly artifact of our past, and it's been completely been replaced with just commercialism.
Right.
You know, like um, I so I started doing these comics on Philip K. Dick. I'm a huge fan of the writer Philip K. Dick. I don't know if you know who he is or um, he's a really interesting guy. So he wrote "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep," which was turned into Blade Runner, which is kind of an example of people taking something and adapting it into something that it wasn't. But I think Blade Runner was pretty good for what it was. But he has this all of his stories. I started taking some of his public domain stories and turning them into comics. And what I thought was really interesting about his perspective on things, which I've also done some video essays on my YouTube channel that people can check out about Blade Runner and whatnot. Um, because I started reading through his journals, and he has this observation that uh, what we're dealing with now is these bureaucratic machines, whether it's government, whether it's the academic educational system, whether it's the institution and institutionalization of religion. You have these giant organizations that basically create these manufactured realities, and then they're trying to insert that into your consciousness, right? So it's like you have these versions of people have this ability to create their own version of reality and then put it out there, and they can just beat you over the head with it, and then it starts to become your reality. When you look
Right.
at like social media or you look at like all the stuff that's going on right now, it's slowly driving people crazy because we're becoming so externally focused rather than turning inward to this spiritual essence that all of us have, you know?
Right. I totally agree with that. I did not know who Dick was until I started looking at your channel, and I have watched Blade Runner and Minority Report long ago. I think, doesn't he kind of conform to the idea it's more like dystopia, that utopia is not a possibility, right?
Yeah, I mean that's mostly what his stories are about. But the way that he I guess the way that he would describe it is like these are recordings of like parallel worlds that he saw
Mm-hmm.
uh, in these visions that he had, because he had some. I don't know if you had a chance to check out any of the video essays, but he had an experience in like 1974 where he had a wisdom tooth pulled, and when he had his wisdom he had his wisdom tooth pulled, and he was in a great deal of pain, and he was sitting at his home waiting for somebody to deliver some pain medication to him. And when he opened up the door, there was a woman standing there, and she had the Christ fish pendant necklace on. And he said that a beam of the sunlight hit the necklace, and then he said it struck him, and he all of a sudden had this vision that he was in Roman times, and that him and her were basically secret Christians, and they were talking about the return of Jesus. And so, anyway, this vision that he had went on to inspire everything it is that he wrote after that. Because I think he died I think he died 10 years after that. And that's when all of the books that he's known for that he wrote, I believe. Um,
Right.
and
It's
he says,
definitely piqued my curiosity
mhm,
watching the few interviews, and I think I watched the first one on um, Blade Runner. I
mhm.
want to watch the rest of them. I want to buy your comic book. It's very intriguing. I think it's very deep and thoughtful, thought provoking. Um, but yeah, I kind of agree with that. I mean, it's like this world, especially like the education system, is like I said, they want to do standardized testing because that's what they know how to do. They know how to put a number on people. But they don't take the time to understand that people are individuals. We're not that's why I was always at odds when I was in biochemistry, toxicology, environmental toxicology, mathematics. I was fine because the mindset was the same as mine. But when I moved into the educational department to do my PhD in learning science, although I had my feet in the hard sciences and in the computer science world, the portion of my funding was coming from the educational department. It was supposed to be multidisciplinary, but they were very biased towards their viewpoint, which was, I mean, honestly, I don't know if I can say this publicly or not, but I really think the educational system has come down to being more indoctrination than education. They don't really know how to handle, well, for instance, when I tried to publish my dissertation article from my dissertation and had a very well published collaborator on it who wrote most of it. So I know it was written really, really good. And the peers in the peer review process in the educational community, this is quote unquote, they said, "We do not care about curiosity."
Wow.
And I'm like, seriously? I mean, how do you even have learning without curiosity? Curiosity is essential to learning. They basically said, we do not care about curiosity. We do not care about games. And I'm like, wow, okay, so you have no clue what a game is. Going back to you talking about with his experience with going back in time and being an early Christian and stuff like that. I can resonate with that because I don't know why God would be interested in a video game, but some of the things that I've accomplished, I don't think I've accomplished anything great, but I've had people tell me that this is like crazy that you've done this as a solo indie dev, that you've done this as a solo project. And we think about that God created us in his image. So doesn't it make sense that we would be happiest when we're creators?
Totally. It totally makes sense. Yeah, like that's something that it's taken a while for that to click in my mind, what it is that actually means. I mean, it from my perspective, I see the imagination is basically like the eye of God.
Right.
And God sees everything, he sees everything unconditional. Whereas this world will always try to condition everything. Like you said, what are we teaching kids? We're teaching kids like, oh, if you don't have the right number over your head, then you're not worthy. If you're not the right skin color, you're not worthy. If you're not the right sexual orientation, you're not worthy. If you're not of the right political persuasion, or you don't have the right job, like whatever your status is in this world, that's what you're measured by.
Right.
But God gives to all unconditionally. Like the only reason why there's starvation or war is because of mismanagement of the shitty politicians that we have in power. It's not because of God. God doesn't he doesn't do things. There is no mistakes that God makes. Creation does not make mistakes.
Right.
And I'm sure you've had that experience with your game where you feel like God is really working through you and creating this thing. Like I've had that experience where I'm drawing something and I get to a certain point and I'm like, this is a complete failure. Like, the idea it is that I have in my mind of what this should be, I have to let go of that on some sense. I have to let that die and let something else come in, so I'll be drawing something and I'll just be like, this is a complete failure. And I'll want to take it and throw it out the window. And I'll pretty much give up on it, and then I'll sit back and I'll be like, well, there's really not anything else for me to do. So I guess this is a failure. So I'll just keep drawing. I don't have anything else to do. So I'm just going to keep working at this, but there's nothing here. And then all of a sudden, boom, there it is. And you're like, how did this happen? You know what I mean?
Right. Right. I mean, it is like you said, almost it's an uplifting, almost spiritual feeling. And a lot of my friends don't play games. My parents, well, my father's gone, but my
Mm.
mother, for the longest time, she was just like, I don't understand. How can a game's just frivolous? It's just a waste of time. But she
Yeah.
had seen, how it's changed my life, how the people that play it love it. For instance, one of the quest lines I've got, the whole thing that set me on this path was I wanted to give something back. I wanted to give something back to the community. And if that's a game, if that's what I'm capable of creating and putting out into the world, it's a far cry better than a lot of things people put out into the world, right? So
Totally.
one of the guys that was play testing this is one of my best friend's sons, and he was in the ninth grade at the time. And he's the one that actually said, I just want to play the game. I don't want the education part. You're capable of doing a commercial
Mhm.
game. And honestly, until that point, I really didn't think I was capable of doing a commercial game. And so he
Mhm.
set me on this path, and he's a member of a robotics team. It's just a community thing, homeschooled, public schooled. But my thing is kind of touching the lives of underrepresented groups in technology, in games, in science, females, people of color, just people that don't even see the possibility that they can be successful because, like you
Mhm.
said, other people's opinion or this norm or this conformity or this mold that they try to put them in, they've told them all their life they're not capable of this. So
Mhm.
this robotics team, they actually made it to the Worlds in Texas this year, and they
Oh
did
wow.
quite well. So I was talking to his mom, and I said, a lot of my game characters are actual people that I know. They're either inspired by somebody that I know that has touched my life, or a game character that has really made a difference in my life. So a lot of the personalities and the dialogue, I have those people in mind when I develop it. So I asked her, I said, can I put Grayson in the game? She said, "Oh, he
Mm.
would love that." She said, "In fact, just go ahead and put him in a Metal in Motion t-shirt." And I said, "Can I do that?" And she said, "Yeah." So then by the time I got home from the restaurant, 30-minute drive, I had a whole quest line written in my head for Metal in Motion and their robot speedwagon and everything like that. So he now has Grayson Metal in Motion security system in Toontown. And so they're really excited about it, to see themselves in a game.
That's really cool. That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, and that's the power of doing something from your heart, is that it has the ability to really touch people and transform people. And we've become so, like, this world has set us up to where um, we really don't have the opportunity to always appreciate that that's what life is about, because we have, these governments that are basically just robbing people. Like, we have basically the royalty, and then we have everybody else, and they're always, through inflation, through the way it is that they mismanage everything, the carrot on the stick is always getting a little bit further. It's
Right.
always getting a little bit more difficult for people to just sustain a normal living standard. It's like this race that people get stuck in. And I think what you're saying is a testament to something that I've learned as well, which is that when you start to create something from the heart, like, you're co-creating with this creative force that we know, that we call God. And that force will always sustain itself, right? Like, we think, like, oh, I can't create that comic, or I can't create that game because I don't have the funding. But I'm sure you could speak to this, that somehow, synchronistically, as soon as you start to walk down that path, you'll get what it is that you need when you need it. That project, it will sustain itself in a very strange way, but the physical mind can't see that, right? Because that's what it tells us in the Bible is like you look at with your physical eyes and all you're going to see is just limitation. But if you look at it through your imagination and you just see the possibilities.
Absolutely. That's very well put because I, you know, I have hit some walls, and when I try to take the reins, and I think, all right, I gave myself 6 months to do this, which was totally unrealistic. I mean, totally unrealistic. I thought I was going to put it out in 6 months. Well, it was nowhere near ready.
Mhm.
When it was the educational game, it was ready to go. It was ready to publish. Well, then I just became really unhappy with when I presented it to academia to get it into the school systems. They started saying, well, this is good, but let's change this and let's change this and let's change this. And I felt like I was selling my soul to the proverbial devil. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm not happy with this. So, why am I sticking with this? I'm sticking with this because it's lucrative, because I can make money. So the heck with this. I'm going to follow my dream. I'm going to do what Grayson said. I'm going to do a commercial game. I'm going to take complete control and make it into what I want to make it. And then I thought I was going to release 2 years ago,
Mhm.
and I signed up for a marketing class because I know nothing about marketing and I had done nothing to market the game. And they basically, were pretty harsh, said that it was not quality, it was not Steam quality, it
Mhm.
was free game quality. Um, it hurt.
Yeah.
Stumbled for a while, put it back out there on social media, started getting even worse toxic remarks
Mhm.
about the artwork mainly. The artwork's ugly, the artwork is not consistent. You've got pixel art here, you got high res art here. I wasn't an artist, didn't know what to do about that. So that
Yeah.
set me back about 8 months because couldn't find, my characters are very unique. So I couldn't find anything to buy
Yeah.
and couldn't find anybody that turned out actually, got a price a couple of times, but they never followed through. So I
Yeah.
took a course, did it enough to get by, and I realized now that I'm ready to release the game in its fifth iteration. I
Mhm.
look back and I think, why did I get so upset? I put that timeline on me. I didn't listen to God or the creative force or the anything. I didn't listen to what the game was telling me. And had I launched it a year ago, it would have failed miserably. It was not ready.
Yeah.
Um, so sometimes it's not in your timing. Like you said, you see things through other people's eyes, what other people's expectations are for you, what society's expectations are for you, what your financial expectations are, or your fears. I think a lot of it is just out of fear of failure, fear of going forward or whatever. But sometimes it just can't be your timing. It is. It's a whole different level of internal, spiritual creativity, your creative muse, and you just have to. The timing is everything. You have to go with the timing, and the timing is right. I feel like the timing's right with the game now. I've still got a ton to do, and that's pretty scary. I'm working probably 70, 80-hour weeks right now trying to get everything tied up, all the loose ends tied up. The I'm working on the finale now. Believe it or
Mhm.
not, I just now wrote my finale. I really had no idea how to end the game, and that's why it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I didn't know how to end it, but I think I've got a really good finale written now, so I'm ready to move forward and into the finish line.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is your marketing right here, Jackie. I mean, Rebecca. Sorry, Rebecca.
That's okay. Everybody calls me Jackie.
You gotta do some podcasts. Just talking with you, it's very inspiring
Oh,
because everything it is that you're saying is right in line with the vibe of what it is that you're trying to communicate with your game. It's about inspiration, it's about curiosity, and you can feel it in the game design. I hope you can still see my screen here.
I can.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So I'm just kind of looping the trailer that you have here, which is really cool. But I mean, just from looking at this and thinking like you did this alone, um, I mean, I can tell it's just an insane amount of work. Just because, you know, like one of the things that I ran into with doing the comics, and I'm sure you can, I'm sure you can attest to this, is like you go, okay, great, this comic is going to take 2 weeks. Well, go ahead and take that and multiply that by 3. Just go,
Exactly. It falls
right?
into that category that we scientists like to say, the things you don't know, you don't know. Those get you in
Mhm.
trouble.
Yeah,
If you know you
totally.
don't know it, you can deal with it. But if you don't know you don't know it, there's no way to forecast that that's going to happen. So all of these characters I drew myself. You know, they'll get by. This is my
So
big bad. I bought him. But
these guys right here, you drew all these
yes,
characters.
I drew them. They're my little tunes. And so it's kind of cool because like Jessica Rabbit, you see her, she's a karate expert. And I didn't really, this was kind of a serendipitous thing too. I decided, okay, well, let's, you know, like Fallout 4 and Skyrim. Skyrim has the books, Fallout 4 has the computers, and there's like history in Fallout 4. And I thought that's really
Mhm,
cool. So I put this computer system in, and you can, it's just totally optional. But
mhm,
each animal has something that is real about that animal in their
mhm.
backstory. So like rabbits, I had no clue. It said that rabbits have this signature move called a binky. When they're happy, they jump up and do this midair spin. And I thought, how great is that? Because my rabbit's a karate expert.
That's perfect.
So that's the kind of thing when I think there's a higher power moving these pieces around, because I mean, how does that happen, right?
Yeah,
But
totally. Yeah,
back to
'cause
the dragonfly things with the
mhm,
dive bomb and dragonfly robots where Jackie's running up under the shelters. That's my version of the Skyrim pendulum puzzle.
mm,
You know, in
okay.
Skyrim, we have all those pendulums that you have to time it and run through. So that's my
Yeah, yeah.
version of that inspiration.
So what were the games that like really inspired you? What were the games that like okay, so was Skyrim was so because this is like an RPG, it's action RPG, right?
Action RPG is what I'm calling it, what I've been told it is. Yeah, so like I said, Todd Howard has always been my aspiration,
Mhm.
just a heavy influence on my life, Todd Howard.
Okay.
Um, so Skyrim, I played Skyrim over 1,200 hours for my dissertation
Oh, wow.
to make sure
For
that
your
mod,
dissertation.
yeah. So like 1,200 hours I played Skyrim. When I got my dissertation done, defended, I took a break from Skyrim because it had become work instead of play.
Yeah.
And I played Fallout 4 for about 6 months.
Mhm,
And so both of those games, Fallout 4, I love Fallout 4 in that I'm combat centric.
mhm,
I like Fallout 4's kind of RPG, FPS combination.
mhm.
So I hesitated calling this game an RPG because you can't change the player character. The player character is what she is, although she does have decisions in the game that she can make that changes the game.
Mm.
But a lot of people that have got a lot more experience in indie game design than I do said, "Oh, absolutely, it's an RPG. You know, you've got all of the qualities of an RPG. You just can't change her clothes and change her." But then, you know, it's a shooter. She shoots shuriken, and you can craft potions and put magical potions on the shuriken that changes the way they behave in the game.
Oh,
So I
wow.
don't have guns and knives and stuff like what I would consider that's my pendulum problem. Um,
Mhm.
and so, but the shuriken, you know, she can put ice potions on it or fire potions on it or whatever, and they react differently in the game. So I guess
Oh,
it is a shooter. Also,
I
there's kind of a the consequence you have for dying in the game, I think, is kind of nasty. You level up by getting your belts, which with a ninja, actually, I think there's only two belts. I've got like 8 or 9 or 10, something like that, but that's for the mechanics of the game. I've taken some liberties there. But you level up based on your score. And if you die, you have to start over at 0.
oh,
So you
wow.
keep all your stuff, you keep the level that you're at, you keep all of your inventory so you don't have that kind of a penalty. But
Mhm.
if you were 1 point away from your next level up, you have to start back over at 0. So that's your death penalty.
Oh,
Some people
that's
say
kind
that's
of.
harsh. I don't know.
I mean, I think that's cool. I think it's cool to play around with those mechanics. I feel like there's so many different mechanics that that have not been utilized to their full potential in game design. It seems like sometimes it's kind of like big open world stuff. You know, I whenever I see like another big AAA open world game, I always wonder like, well, when is somebody just going to go the other direction with it and just make it like Majora's Mask, right? Where you have one town and you're just involved in this one town, but like what could you like if you took that same amount of energy you put into building this massive thing, if you just put it into this one small little area, like what kind of possibilities could you do with that? You
Well,
know
I
what I
can tell you
mean?
that's probably what I'm going to visit. If I get around to doing my passion game, I'm going to put it out in. It's not going to be open world. I think making the decision to make this game an open world was one of the biggest mistakes I made.
Oh,
Todd Howard makes it look
really?
easy, but it is not easy. I will
So
not
this
do it
is open
again.
world.
Hmm?
So this is open world.
It is open world. And let me tell you, I
Oh,
thought, okay, open world just means you can go wherever you want to go, whenever you want to go there, right? I thought that's all there
yeah.
is to open world. Which I know Mass Effect is linear, and that always bugged me that it's linear. I like Fallout
Yeah.
4. I like Skyrim. I like being able to go wherever I want to go, including straight up the mountain if I have a horse and walk sideways. But Todd Howard just made it look easy, and I thought I'm just going to make it open world. But oh my golly, that that is probably the reason this game turned into a 3-year project instead of a 1-year project.
Really?
Because you've got a questing system, you've got quest things, you've got gatekeepers, you've got a story, and I had to end up putting all these filters on the dialogue system. I had to put in safe checks for quest items. I had to put in hidden areas if you didn't have the knowledge that you needed for that place to make sense. It was just a
Wow.
whole big old nightmare. Wouldn't advise it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a little bit of their design theory on the idea of like Scum was designed in mind that like you don't walk longer than like 10 seconds or 5 seconds without either seeing something on your HUD's entry or something in the distance. Like there's always something within your vision that is like potentially pulling you in that direction.
Right.
And which is what makes it so which is what makes Skyrim so interesting, because like you can just point off in a direction and just be like, okay, what's over there? But yeah, I imagine as a solo developer, it just must be like, oh my God, what have I done?
Yeah, I stole the wolves in Skyrim. If you're walking along a path and you're way out in the countryside and there's nothing going on, if a wolf walks across your path, if you follow that wolf, it always leads you somewhere to something interesting. So I have
That's cool.
wolves in the game that if you follow them, it'll lead you to a treasure chest or something. But you're right, it's incredibly difficult to try to kind of keep the big picture and make sure that as I move the player, there's always some movement or something coming into their line of sight that will draw them to
Mhm.
that area or give them some form of interest. And I think Skyrim and Fallout 4 does that very well, but particularly Skyrim. There's always a flag flying or a flicker of light or a sound. Mine's
Mhm.
not 3D, so three-dimensional sound, spatial sound doesn't really help in my game, but
Mhm.
I try to always have something coming into their vision somewhere to kind of lead them where they're going.
Yeah. Yeah. This is okay. So I gotta ask, why are you not kickstarting this? Why,
Why am I
why are
what?
you not, why are you not kickstarting this? Why don't you put this on Kickstarter and see if like you can get, I mean, essentially, if you think about it, Kickstarter is kind of like at this point, it's kind of like a pre-order. It's like a sophisticated form of pre-ordering. But like you, if you just quietly release this on Steam, like you've put so much work into this. I'm sure there's got to be a way that you can start recouping your cost and getting like a lot of eyes on it. Like how do you feel about like people's reaction to it and like the energy around it? Do you feel like there's a good energy around the release that's coming up?
Honestly, no. I'm not good at social media. I'm an extremely introverted. A year
Right.
ago, the game was getting basically negative comments. I totally revised it, revised the art. It became about 3 times bigger than it was. Implemented a lot of systems, a lot more sophisticated enemies, um, more puzzles, more sophisticated gameplay. Changed the rating as far as teen plus being the age limit for it. Started getting more positive comments. Started getting some pretty good eyes on the game, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm just so overwhelmed because of the time that it takes to do this game. It's such a big project and it doesn't leave me time to do anything else. Or if it's just that I, Kickstarter is a job from what I understand. I mean, it is very time consuming. I don't know anything about it. I wish I had the money to just hire somebody and say, do the Kickstarter for me and let me just do the game. It's not my happy place. Social media is not my happy place, but I realize you can't just put a game out there anymore. It's not that it's not a good game. I think it's a good game. People that have played
Mhm.
it think it's an amazing game. In fact, they've told me they would pay me 3 times what I'm asking for. I'm putting the price tag of like $24.95 on it. I've had people say they'd
Mhm.
pay twice that for it, which makes me feel good. Um, but I don't know. I just don't know how to get any momentum behind it because I just don't know anything about social media. I've lived in this world of Jackie's Wacky Adventure literally for 3 years.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up the interview now, but we're gonna talk about that off air. We're gonna see how I can help you solve that issue because
Okay.
I feel like I have good information on that. But I do have another interview I'm gonna have to do in like about 45 minutes. So, um, but this was an awesome interview. For anybody who listened to this and is inspired by this and you want to check out the game, I'm going to put the Steam link in the description box. You can please wish list the game, as well as I'm going to put Rebecca your YouTube or other social media links it is that you want me to share. I'm going to put all of that in the description.
Okay. Thank you.
And yeah, we're going to get some eyes on this because this is like a colossal amount of work. And it has to be recognized. It has to be recognized by the universe. It can be ignored. It's just so. It yeah. Did you do this for just Windows or is it Mac as well?
Right now, it's just for PC, Windows PC. If the game shows any kind of success or potential on Steam, which I hope that it will, I would really like to go ahead and get it built out for Steam Deck, which will, right now it's mouse and keyboard. So I'd have to put in controller support and do Steam Deck and possibly Xbox. I think Xbox would be a good platform for it. So that's in the future. What I really, really, really want it to do is to make enough money to support my next project or a DLC. But I've got a couple of really meaningful games. One that's going to touch on a pretty dark topic, which I'm kind of dark
Mhm.
and sarcastic, but not in this cartoony game. And then I'm working with an environmental group to touch on some global environmental problems, which kind of appeals to me as a scientist. And I would really like to get at least enough money coming in from this game to go forward with those two games. But I guess time will tell. We'll see.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna be watching you closely. We're gonna figure this out because I'm curious too. Um, So anyway, thanks for everybody that was listening to this. Like I said, all of the link to Jackie's Wacky Adventure and Rebecca's social media is in the description box below. Thank you guys for listening to this podcast, and take it easy.